everybody, welcome to another edition of On the Trail in Search of Living Legends. This is going to be Season 5, Episode 11. We are back with Dan Nedrelo, Part 2 of this episode 2 weeks ago. It's great to have you back, Dan. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Glad to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, Dan, good to see you there.
And of course, we're joined by Nick, my partner, of course. Couldn't do this without him. So, Dan, what's been going on?
Well, I just got through in the field today down in Iowa, looking at a couple locations that we've had wood knocks and rocks thrown and some questionable vocals. And before that, I just finished up some artwork for a friend of mine who's working on a book. I've got one more to go. And then I am working on a foot project, actually. Basically, I'm trying to get measurements from people who would be willing to give me a tracing of their foot or a photograph of their foot in any substrate. Right now we have snow up here. Some people have been sending snow prints in, looking for mud, looking for dirt, anything, just simply because that way we've got a wide variation of human Homo sapiens that is a definite source and verified source of study. So we can see the individual variation that people have, and everything from toe variation and length to heel width or across the ball, etc. Arches, highly variable, some more flat-footed, heavier people, lighter people, all those things are being noted. I'm just starting this out. It should have been done a long time ago, but I just don't get many tracks. And now, being in association with the Ozark Mountain Sasquatch team, we do have tracks, and some of them aren't very acceptable because they're so young. Immatures, juveniles. We've got 6 to 6.5 inch. We've got a 9.5 to 9 3/4 inch, and then we've got a 14 inch right now. And we presume the male comes through. Shane's going to be working on that, and so I'm in touch with those guys, and then working on this project. So, and also taking as many varied reports as I can with all kinds of projects.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea, though, Dan. About 3 years ago, I was talking with some of my admins from the different states, and we came up with an idea to get males and females to, we were one-track minded. We wanted to wet up some dirt and have them step into the mud and take pictures and do plasters of them. And unsurprisingly, though, not a lot of people wanted to help.
Exactly.
Very little people wanted to get out there and dirty their feet up.
That's one of the difficulties in the project. We're trying to keep it fun. I'm also giving people an option to just trace their feet so that we can get the dimensions. So that way older folks or really, really younger folks or people that just don't feel comfortable with the idea can get involved. Keep your socks on. We'll still take the measurement. And this is giving me, I don't have a lot of samples right now, but over Christmas, I took 17 samples from our family get-together. So, it's building. It's just in its start, and I'm looking for more input, looking for more helpers, and eventually we'll share the information. But I just need the information so I can strengthen my own internal capabilities, because this is something I never had to focus on much before. But it needs to be a focus now. I'm also doing the wildlife thing as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Canines, etc.
What we tried to do, Dan, is we tried to get some basketball players. I mean, these big guys, 17-inch sneaker, 15-inch sneakers, and the like. And they all looked at us like, no, I don't think so. You want me to what? Step in mud? No, I don't think so.
Exactly.
I guess you got to get some friends, but I mean, how many friends do you know that are, 6'9", 7 foot, and they can actually give you a large print to compare? I mean, if you go on the internet and you look up wolf prints, bear prints, animal prints for that matter, they've got tons of them. You got pictures all over the place. But for humans, no, it's not too much for human prints out there.
No.
That would be interesting, though. I think we got to come up with a different shtick on that. Maybe approach them and tell them it's for some sort of a scientific study,
That's
you know,
exactly
Yeah.
what I'm doing, sir. Precisely.
anthropology, something like that.
Yes. Yeah. So
Make
far, it's working. We're putting the word out, and I'll be knocking on doors and talking to everybody on an individual basis. I've got nearly 7,000 contacts. Hopefully, I can get a percentage of that. So we'll see. We'll see where we are in a year.
That would be great to compare.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely.
I think so. And then I'll be obviously taking I'm requesting as many suspect Sasquatch tracks as I can get as well. And so many, I believe, are rejected simply because they're not big enough. That's human. That's
Mm.
this, that's that. I don't think the whole picture is observed or taken all the time by everyone. So I think people jump to conclusions. They become emotional over it. We're looking at when were these tracks made? 2 o'clock in the morning? What temperature? And how many miles from the road? And you let your children run around in a swamp or a place where there's garbage at 2 o'clock in the morning? I don't
Yeah.
think
I
so.
don't think so, not at all. I mean, they're discounting the fact that there could be juvenile Sasquatch out there. So
Exactly.
you're gonna get a smaller print, female Sasquatch, female juveniles.
Yep.
Exactly.
And if you look at the toes have nails, fingernails, as opposed to like Dogman with the claws at the end. The Sasquatch has like the nails at the end of it. So that should differentiate between a human footprint in the mud and a non-human one.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Hey, that's one of the things people don't take into consideration.
Yes. So definitely good luck on that project because that sounds like it's a hard one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm pleased with our process so far, and I'm not working real hard on it, but I'm increasing the time, and that will increase month by month as it grows, and I'm able to show samples and examples and things like that. So we're looking for hardy, energetic people that really want to help a project.
Mm.
So we'll see. We will see. So anything new and unusual on you guys' parts this week?
Just the usual, 40 to 50 reports from throughout the country.
Well, that's
For
pretty
me,
amazing.
you know,
Did one stand out above the rest?
yeah, unfortunately, one did, and it was out of California and Southern California, no less. And Jay and I were discussing the fact that Southern California just had a snowstorm. It's like it doesn't rain in California, Southern California as it is. So how are they having a snowstorm?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm throwing my suspicions towards the Chinese balloon that was, detected above Alaska, and it was flying around there before it came to anybody's attention. Uh, and I know a lot of buddies of mine when I was on different podcasts. Well, why don't they shoot it down? I mean, you don't know what the payload is. That's why they don't shoot it down. You got to watch out. What's in there? What is that balloon carrying?
Right.
Information that I got was that the balloons were anywhere from the size of one bus to 4 buses, and I mean, that's a pretty big balloon. And
Yeah.
what was it carrying, in its basket below it? And fortunately, I thought they would wait, first of all, before it went over a body of water. I know up in the Great Lakes, up, above Michigan, out in the Atlantic Ocean, that's where they shot a few of them down. I don't know where they shot the rest of them down, but I do know 2 of them were shot over a body of water, and that's the safest way to do it.
Yeah.
But could they have been seeding the clouds, with something? That's something I don't have an answer to. And I've been trying to find it on the internet, and there's really not much that they're saying right now.
Be out of my league.
Yeah.
That's for sure. My goodness.
Definitely.
Well, Jeremiah, we talked a little bit earlier about
Yeah.
possibility of illustrating I believe that big female that you had seen, Sasquatch.
Yes.
And Nick, I know I'd like to draw the one that you saw as well in New Jersey that you had lit up. So the Dogman. So those are a couple of examples of projects that I'll be working on in the months ahead as
That'd
well.
be great.
I've
Yeah.
got I've got one more illustration for a book project. I just sent the first one in last night, and the author was very happy with it. And now we're going to get the second one done, and then from there, I've got a gal waiting. We'll get her done, and then I'll come into you guys, and we'll take it from there.
Oh, that'd be great.
So we can get that started. And I'll be glad to pass on some of the examples that I do as they build up as well. So, you know, you can see what's going on and make comparisons. And I was just going to ask that question with you. I know different people have different versions of how many different types of Sasquatches there are. And I know, Jay, you had referred to in the past of some. I've got a fellow that had one that looked well, like one that you had described. It was actually quite aggressive toward people and a big gray fella, I believe. But I've also got caveman looks, Native American looks, and ape looks. And I know in Wisconsin we have a chimp-like face described in some cases. So what I'm wondering is, what is your take at this point with all the background information you all have on these things? How much variety are we actually looking at that you really would divide into different categories?
Yeah, the question we got to ask ourselves, okay, as far as these different types of Sasquatches. Now, there's a possibility. Gary and I have talked about this several times. Could we be dealing with totally different entities, or are they all in fact part of the Sasquatch family? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I'm just writing that down because I like that.
Yeah.
There's so many unknowns.
There's so many unknowns. We could be dealing with different entities. I know, like up here, we've got the patty type I've dealt with the more caveman looking type down in the St. Lawrence Seaway Valley. Now they look the caveman type, which I used to refer to as a type 4. They're more proportionally built like us. They don't have the long arms below the knees. They're, the shoulders are more proportionally built like us. They don't have their legs are a little bit longer. They look more like a caveman as opposed to a patty type or a type 2, which you're going to find mostly down south. The skunk apes, wood boogers, and so on and so forth. I personally think if either way you look at it, whether they are part of the same family, whether they are all Sasquatch or whether they are not, I believe we're dealing with. I personally, I'm probably gonna get a lot of negative feedback on this, but I personally think we're dealing with more than 10.
Well, at this point, nothing surprises me simply because, number one, science and our technology should have this in hand. It does not, one,
right?
At least publicly. Privately, what's going on behind the scenes with the folks that's got all the resources, who knows? I can imagine. And plus, we get pieces of that from time to time regarding private comments made that become public. From maybe an Army officer talking with somebody who is outside the ring of need to know.
Right.
And then also we're looking at the question. You've got, if these were standard flesh and blood entities, which many believe and many don't, we could very well have different genera of pre-hominids, or shall I say fossil men. Maybe they are actually crossbreeding and producing who knows what. Then you have recessive genetics for potential throwbacks from earlier times that may show a completely different phenotype or physical characteristic.
That's true.
The possibilities seem endless, And more people have been privately commenting to me on what you just suggested. What kind of entities are these? And is it
Yeah.
possible that we've got something that isn't even related to what we think it is?
Exactly.
I do not know at all. And I certainly I'm not qualified to comment on all the different aspects of claims that people
Right.
have with these things. As a biological scientist, I'm looking at this from a standard flesh and blood situation so that I can understand how they utilize plants, animals, soils, waters, space, time, calories, all the physical traits that one would expect a natural, normal wild animal to have. But so far, they've certainly eluded us. So,
Yeah.
Well, you know, Dan,
hopefully,
in my research on this, I mean, I do all the cryptids. I don't just do Dogman.
sure,
But in my
sure.
research on Sasquatch, because it is the big one out there. I mean, the abominable snowman, you know, the Yeti. Then you have the Yowie over in Australia. I'm there's a couple of things I'm looking at there. Could they be interdimensional beings because of the fact that they disappear so easily? That's one
Yeah.
thing I'm looking at. Do they go through a portal and are they from another dimension or from another place? And you know, and also something else I'm looking at while I'm doing research and taking notes. I mean, God, I've got like 4 notebooks, yay thick, on notes on Sasquatch alone. Uh, it I'm taking into effect the climate where they're coming from. You know, you're talking about they look different. Okay, so the Yeti has more of a flattish type of face, and that's up in a cold climate in the Himalayas. And then you have the Patty type who has more of an expressive face. You know, it's a little further out. You will have some of the Bigfoot that do look close to a gorilla's face, but really not, you know, not exactly. So I'm thinking maybe climate has something to do with it because the skunk apes now they look totally different.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, and from the descriptions of the ones I've got from different research in Alaska and in different parts of Canada, now you have another look.
Yep.
I mean, there's just so much. There's so many questions.
Oh,
And,
we
There
have,
you know, there's just so many questions. Wow.
is. Yeah.
and really, I'll just jump in real quick. And really, we've
Yeah.
only got a fragment of the information that's going to be available.
Yeah.
So it's like, where are we with that? Fragmented. So it's going to be, well, hopefully we'll get answers to questions like those. That's for sure. As more and more
Hopefully.
people continue. I just hope we document well, you know.
I
That's
wish to
my
God
biggest-
we had something like back in the 40s and 50s. They had the Cryptozoology Society. I know they're disbanded since, but they had a main headquarters and people met there and they had their records there. And can you imagine actually having a building in this day and age? And this is something I've discussed with my very close admins that IDP USA. I run with some of my admins there, and we've discussed that many a times where it would be great to have a centralized location where everybody can come to, you know, and you can refer to the records. And wouldn't that be phenomenal in this day and age? We'd be able to have 75-inch screens up on the walls, the computer systems, you know, and the amount of books that we would have in one place instead of having to go here, there, I mean, that's what I do, Dan. When I travel, I go to old libraries, I go to old bookstores, I try to find stuff because if I could just get one little piece of information out of that $50 book that I bought in that old bookstore that sold for $1 in its day, and I feel good about it.
Yeah.
You know, it would be great to have one place. So anybody that's listening out there that wants to fund a project like that, having a building purchased, let us know. I'd love to do something like that.
Definitely let us know. Yeah. I mean, back to what you were saying, Nick. You know, you take these different. You got the Yeti, you've got the Yowie, you've got the orangutan, orang pendek.
Oh yeah,
the Yaren. You know, those are centralized in different countries. Now,
right.
what I was getting at before is just here in the U.S. I think we're dealing with close to 10 types. just within the United States. You know, that may sound outrageous to some people, but I mean, I know I've dealt with 3 myself. So, and that's just between 2 states. So,
I'll just
you
say
know,
none of this surprises me, and as we continue to document, I wouldn't be surprised. Sibylla and Alexa Evans and so many of the other artists that are picking this up now are working more with witnesses, and that's a goal of mine. I've got a pretty darn big network that covers a lot of time, and I'm looking forward to basically calling and contacting and working with as many people that are willing. But ideally, we can verify with secondary evidence at least some of those reports, just to help
yeah,
increase the likelihood that we do have something legitimately described rather than, I think it looked like this. But if you look at 2 different illustrations from 2 different artists from the same person, sometimes they don't look so close. So
right,
there are some things that we have to continue to work on. But hopefully
yeah,
more of these drones going up and more of these people that are starting to get images, hopefully the resolution will start coming to us where more and more people realize, this is actually footage of what we wanted.
yeah,
And there's a stigma there because so many people will emotionally reject any images and without taking the time to look and listen to the person making the claim or providing the image. So, and it's extremely difficult to get good images in the dark, especially when people are nervous or there's distance or et cetera, et
yep,
cetera. And you don't have a $22,000 vehicle for taking the exposure. So,
right,
you know.
right,
And a lot of times, these witnesses, say even like during the daytime, they'll report what they've seen, but not 100% of what they've seen. Because
Often true.
there's this phenomena with human beings where a human being will say in their mind, nah, it couldn't have looked like that, or it couldn't have been this, or couldn't have been that. So they don't mention that. And that's where a good investigator, a good person who knows how to question people comes in, and you got to kind of draw it out of them, and you kind of have to make them feel comfortable enough to come forth with it. Because, Dan, there's a lot of information out there that these people do not give out. They
Mm-hmm.
absolutely do not give out because they're like, it couldn't have been. I don't think so. No. I would like you to tell me what you thought you saw, what you heard, what you felt, what inside your brain, did something happen? Because all these things are important and they're not reporting it because of that one little human phenomena. I don't know if there's a name for it out there, but that's what's going on. We're not getting the whole 100% of it.
I couldn't agree with you more. We're getting some surface questions, but a lot of the detailed questions aren't there. And I find that extremely frustrating. So I will be taking note of that. And I've been in this now 25 years. So pretty good series of exchanges. Sometimes you get frustrated. Some years aren't as productive as others. But
Right,
to actually make sure that you review this and get it taken care of, I'm finding it's good to go back to people over time and compare notes too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
Quite
is,
often there's discrepancies there. There's questions that come up that you either forgot to ask, or that they at the time refused to deal with,
yeah,
or they may remember something later. And I've run into quite a few witnesses that are very concerned because they were dismissed. In other words,
Oh,
no
yeah.
one believed them, and that was it. I've got 2 examples here. One, um, yeah, I haven't got very many police reports locally, but I did get one, and it turned out that the fellow that'd seen it, was in 1979, and he and his buddy were illegally not, they weren't poaching deer, but they were shining deer, yeah, out of
mm,
season. Okay, they're going down the road, and they happen to see the observer on the back of the pickup truck sees a Sasquatch, or at least a very tall figure standing behind 5 foot tall saplings, a row of them. And it's like, it's got to be 7 feet because it's, head and shoulders above the saplings. Okay, he's freaking out, tapping on the window of the driver, and the driver freaks out, accelerates. They're going down a one-man road. They get down to the end, they garble up a little bit, and oh my God, we got to get the hell out of here. They turn around and they turn and they drive back, and of course it's gone. Well, it isn't too long before the driver passes away, car accident. The other observer turns out to not tell anybody. Over time, he talks to one guy, gets laughed at, lets it go for 20 years, runs into this particular policeman who I know, and they have a talk. And it turns out that that fellow knew who I was, but didn't know that I was doing this simply because I pretty well keep it privately local. I got a chance to talk to him. He turned out to be married to one of my sister's best friends. And I asked him, did you tell her? And he said, well, we're not together anymore. And I'm like, did you tell her? And no, are you crazy? So there's an example of how much he never did come back to me to talk again, although I promised. I had another incident where back in sixth grade, we had a youngster tell our class that he had seen a 10-foot, or that his brother had seen a polar bear. Okay. Well, that's ridiculous. Everybody
Where?
laughed at him. Everybody laughed at him. 5 years ago, I cornered him and said, hey, remember back in sixth grade when you told us that your brother saw a polar bear? What was going on there? Did you believe him? Kind of laughingly. And he looks at me and he goes, yeah. And I said, cool. And he goes, there aren't any polar bears in Wisconsin. And I said, obviously. And he goes, do you know what it was? And I said, I have an idea. He looked at me and he goes, are you into that? And I said, far more than you'd ever know. And then he gave me 2 Sasquatch reports. And we've been in contact since. And since then, another fellow of mine happened to be buddies with his brother and stayed overnight at the house there back in the 60s. And what was interesting about that was he was told, don't stay in the back room because of all the hairy looking faces that look in the window. So that was one of the ways that I learned how to get reports. Don't talk about the subject, talk about audio, talk about animals, and just get to know people so they can drop their guard and give you information. I don't mention the word Bigfoot or Sasquatch to local people. I talk, and when I want to talk about it in front of people, I just refer to it as target species. So, and keep it from a wildlife biology standpoint. One more count. I've got a buddy of mine who had an experience in southwestern Wisconsin. He was coming over from Iowa. He's driving along, and all of a sudden, this thing jumps from a 7-foot ledge on one side of the road, clears the road, and it's gone. Okay. Well, what's he looking at? Like a wolf. Well, there aren't very many wolves in southern Wisconsin, although we do get them come through once in a while, but it was bigger than that. And it leaped like a mountain lion, didn't have a tail. Well, we know where we're going with that. It wasn't a black bear. And in addition to that, as it leapt across the road, it turned its head, so we didn't get to see the profile or snout or anything like that. So as far as I'm concerned, that's got a good chance to be what we want it to be. It was just out as far as the headlights would hold, and it cleared the side, the head of the top of the car. So it was over 6 feet off the ground when it cleared the road in one leap. And really, the only physical creature that's going to be able to do that is a mountain lion. And it wasn't a white-tailed deer.
Right.
We know it was a mountain lion. So there you go. I did have one other situation where I had a librarian come up to me after a general presentation when I mentioned that I was researching the subject matter. And she said, do we have silver bears? I said, no. Our bears are 90-some% black in this state. And she said, well, I said, did you see a silver bear? And she goes, well, I'll tell you the story if you keep it private. Okay. And long story short, she saw what she thought was a silver bear. It was over after midnight. She was on a bridge in a stream bottom and she was heading toward it. And as she got closer, it stood up and it walked across the road on 2 legs. And then it grabbed a tree and looked at her and then walked into the forest. And that certainly wasn't a black bear. So anyway, there's a couple local reports from my neck of the woods.
Well, here's a little zoological fact. Black bears, because people think, oh, bears don't get hunted by other bear. Brown bear hunt black bear, and in certain parts of the country, the black bear their fur will change color. It's just a internal defensive mechanism. So they'll turn to a brownish color.
Mhm.
Also, I know that there are some species of black bear out there that they're turning to brown, sometimes turns them more grayish colored. Now, what this librarian or this lady who she saw, the thing coming up on two legs, it's how tall? That's my question. How tall does she think it was?
Well over 7. It wasn't a black bear.
That
90,
definitely wasn't a black bear. No.
90,
No.
okay, Nick, 97% of our black bear are black in Wisconsin, according to the Black Bear Association. We have over 25,000 bear in the state.
Right.
Technically, we only got one species of black bear here. The other black bear would be the Himalayan black or the Asian. But anyway, there's so many subspecies, geographical variations. Then we get into taxonomy, and that's a big argument because you have people thinking how many grizzly there are, and et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, I was going to say that in this case, because of the fact that it grabbed the tree and she could see digits from a hand.
Digits, right.
I think that pretty well iced it.
Well, what iced it for me is when you said the size. It's like, yeah, okay. That's pretty big.
Oh, exactly.
That is pretty big. I mean, I know Grizz will be, 8 feet tall and all that stuff, but wow. And they don't have the digits. You were definitely going to see that big claw on the paw.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But long story short, people just don't come out with everything they've seen. They just don't come out with it. And unless you're going to give them an intensive interview and, along the lines of being almost an interrogation, you're not going to be able to draw it out. You can't just say, oh, tell me about it and just leave it at that. And that's what I found a lot of my field investigators out there, that's what they do. Oh, tell me your story. Oh, okay. Thank you. Bye. I mean, geez, if you don't take a chance and ask some questions, what's so hard about that? I mean, ask them what the weather was. Was it night? Was it day? Was the sun up? Was it raining? Was it 60 degrees, 50? Can you tell me about that? Was there anybody else around? Was it traffic area? Was it in a forest area? I mean, there's just so many questions you can ask them and try to draw it out. And we really need all this stuff. You really need all that and really need it all to be put into a data bank. That would be excellent.
I agree.
Really good.
I agree. And as we all continue to work on this, that's the hope, While the authorities sit back and let us do the work, and then they'll come in and, pick it up and take it over. So I just curious, guys, what are you running into any aggression situations though, where there's actually verified people missing? Because I know that keeps coming up, and I'm just wondering, like, what kind of percentage do you think that is out there? I mean, 5%, 10%? You go way more than that? I'm curious.
Because
there's so much variation in the interpretation that people have.
Well, that missing 911 stuff, you know what? I don't care what people think. It's my own opinion. I think it's 20% cryptid related.
Yeah.
I think it's 20% cryptid, Dan. I'm going to tell you right now, because like in the state of Iowa, out there in California and upstate Washington, I mean, there's just no trace. There's no blood on the ground. There's no clothing on the ground. There's no bones. There's nothing. I mean, I realize the forest claims, what it put out, like the reason you don't usually see a bear carcass, because even deer will eat the bear bones, for the minerals and calcium. Sure. But I mean, when it comes to a human, say if I was found out there, for instance, you're going to find my combat boots, and I've got these rubber soles on the bottom. So you're going to find the rubber. The bear or the deer are not going to be eating my rubber soles. You're going to find some blood, some places. I've investigated some of these type of missing people out there in my time with a full-blown team. And I'm talking about not just New Jersey. I'm talking about other states, at least 25 other states that we've been to, that we've investigated that. and we found zero, zilch. And what does that mean? That means that person was picked up and taken away.
Taken
You
away.
know? Knocked out, or they passed out and they were picked up and taken away. Now, they were either taken away by a kidnapper or something. I mean, if it was a kidnapper, they should put up some sort of resistance. Maybe not. Some people don't, but maybe they did. If it was a killing, there would be blood. There might be a shell from a gun out there found. There might be a bullet that passed through the body found. There should be blood on the ground. You might find saliva. You might find urine, feces. You know, when a person dies, it's out there.
Yeah.
Nothing out there. So that's why I'm giving it a 20% of that missing persons one. So I mean, that's just my opinion.
Sure, sure.
I gotta agree. And then what's really interesting is when these hunters go missing. Hunters know the woods.
Yeah.
Hunters know what they're doing in the woods. You know, when they're finding, a hunter isn't going to set their weapon down and then disappear.
And where is that weapon too? You know, where is that weapon?
Right.
How did he disappear?
Exactly.
You know, Jay, most hunters I know will carry a secondary backup gun.
Yes.
Like in a holster on their hip, you know, a pistol plus their rifle, just in case
Plus the rifle.
this thing backfires or, you know, misfires and something happens, it jams, and now they're going to go to their secondary piece. So you're right. He brought up an excellent point. Where is that rifle? Because there are a lot of hunters missing out there.
A lot.
Where is that rifle?
And I know in some cases that's been described where the rifle has been twisted or bent or laid up along the tree or the stump alongside with the hunter that was actually killed and just left there.
Right.
I don't know what percentage of those reports there are. I remember reading through some of the 411s and some of the interactions with the children that they found. Some of the locations that they found the children was extremely interesting. One, I found somebody was a youngster was found in the middle of a little island in a fast running stream. And it's like, how would he have fought the current to get there? There were some that were talking about, well, we were hiding because of the gorillas. And then there were there was a kid that was found up underneath the stream bank, up in the rock ledges, and he would have had to have gone through the stream to get up underneath in there. And some of them talk and some of them don't. And some of them are 3 and some of them are 7. So they're now, my thinking is in a lot of cases, the kids picked up, looked at, carried around, and then kind of they get bored and drop the kid off and then go. But in some places, the kid's put in a nice, safe place where he's not going to get hurt. But of course, maybe certain needs aren't taken care of, like he's going to easily dehydrate or he's going to run out of food. Obviously, there's stories of them being brought food, being brought water, etc. So what a mystery we have. Yes. And
it's an unbelievable mystery.
Well, and you guys are such an amazing part of it because of the observations you've had and all the information you're taking. I'm getting the information. I've had some observations, but I haven't had the big whammy one yet. So as I'd mentioned last time, I'm looking for that diurnal observation up close so that when I draw, I can draw what I saw. You know?
Yeah.
So, but one of my favorite illustrations, I probably mentioned it, but I'll mention it again because it's worth it, is when Sibylla was on the phone with a observer and a friend who were looking at about a 6-foot youngster peeking at them from around a tree, close enough to get the details. And so she was able to talk to him on the phone while she drew the.
Wow.
If I didn't get that to you, I will make sure we identify the report so that you can see it. So, because I know it's out there publicly on BFROs. So, but so much of the information we had to work with is fragmented or in those books, and of course that's why I started Wild Man Literature, because I wanted all the authors and all the books one place where we could all go and find them all.
Yeah.
And Daniel Perez is doing a heck of a job with that too. So that's really awesome. Give him a shout. I did have another question too about, I had listened to Cliff recently about these guys. And he's been working with footprints, of course, and he's real interested in vocalizations. And one of the things that had been brought up was that some of the recordings that they got in different places around the country sounded so gibbon-like. And some of them had actually been shared with a gibbon specialist, a biologist who was totally familiar with gibbons. And once she heard these calls from a particular location, and I think there's numerous locations that have gibbon-like calls, but she was convinced that is a white-throated gibbon. No question.
Really?
No question. But as I recall, it was from Alaska. And there are no white-throated gibbon in Alaska.
There are none there.
There aren't. Those are
No.
Asian. So it's very interesting. And I remember back when I started this, I was in my 4th year, and I remember studying all the gibbons in the world just to see the variations in their calls and put them on tape and just to get familiar with them so that when I'm out in the field, I've got that known sound base to listen to. The scream roars that I heard were very much like what's called the Ohio howl. And we got those in response to wood knocks. And that turned out to be just 6 miles south of private property I've been studying for over a dozen years. And so that was really incredible to me. And what's also incredible to me is how many other responses have we gotten that might just be out of earshot. So there's so many factors when we're doing that we may or may not take into account because we're busy in the heat of the moment. Like if you and Stacy are looking at a particular individual from so many yards away, I mean, my gosh, how many senses have you got? You can't be checking out behind you, on the side of you, and everything else at the same time because you're busy.
Yep.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. What's the wildest vocal you've got?
Oh, I've got what you just described. It sounds kind of like an Ohio howl. Now, in between the raw, in between the long extended howls, you hear boom, boom, boom. Either it's whacking a log against a tree, or it's cracking rocks, and then that'll stop. They'll do that 3-4 times. Then he'll pick up the howl again. Raw. Then boom, boom, boom. And then in between that, you can hear the growling, the deep guttural growling in between the knock and the howl.
Have you ever been approached where they're actually heading right toward you and they're like on thunder?
Yes.
And
yes.
Your response?
In my response?
If you don't mind me asking. In other words, how did this turn out? What did you do, and how did you deal with this? And then actually we could talk about trauma afterwards.
Yeah, it was actually, I've told you several times how we never had any problems.
Right.
Well, let me get back to this. This was in North Carolina, okay?
Right.
And and I went out by myself. Do what I don't do what I don't do what I do what I say. That's what I tell people. Don't go out by yourself.
Right.
But like an idiot, I went out by myself.
Sure.
I'm sitting on the bank of the river, and it's about 80 feet across.
Right.
Okay. And from the front of me, all of a sudden, I see a big boulder come flying through the air, and it hits the water directly in front of my feet. And it hit so hard, Dan, you can hear it hit the rocks on the bottom. So then one comes from the right, hits the same exact spot, boom. One comes from the left, boom.
I'm going to jump in. Can you guess the size of these rocks?
I would say 60 pounds.
Okay, so I mean it's bigger than basketball.
Bigger than basketball.
Okay.
Bigger than basketball.
That's shocking right there because of the strength and heft that it would take to.
And the accuracy.
Yes.
We just
same spot.
Same exact spot. So I said to myself, it's time to get up and leave. So I left the area. The next
Sure.
night I went back out and I was doing a Facebook live session and I was in a mud hole where the hogs had been rooting around. And
Okay.
there were some tracks that I had recognized from individuals we were studying. Okay.
Yes.
13 incher, 14 incher, and a 14.5 incher, these tracks. Okay. And there was one that I did not recognize that was 17 inches long.
Great. Daddy.
Exactly. So, a buddy of mine, Travis Bowen, was on with me. I don't know if you know Travis or not. Good guy. Good. He's
Not
from
yet. I
Virginia.
will. I want
He's
to.
out of Virginia. Great researcher. He said, Jay, loop around that mud hole again, see if anything happens. So I said, kind of want to get out of here, but I'll do it for the sake of research. So I looped around that mud hole, and I came back around, and I turned around and looked, and lo and behold, that 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 creature with the 17-inch tracks had been following me.
Oh,
And all of a sudden, Travis says, Jay, get the hell out of there now. And I said, why? What's up? He said, as soon as you turned around, he peeked his head out from behind a
mhm.
tree and just
Sure.
eyeballed you.
You bet.
So,
You bet.
needless to say, I got out of there. And
How close would you say it was at that point?
about 10 feet away.
That's close.
That's too close for
That's
comfort.
close. Yes, sir. Yes,
Too close
sir.
for comfort.
Okay.
And then we were guided. We were Stacy and I one night. I think we interrupted a hunt. We There was two trails. You go down a trail and it splits. And this was in North Carolina again.
Right. Right.
Uh, Bayou river runs into a bayou. We split to the left, and we walked around. Took notice of tracks. Came back, and as we're on the main trail to walk out of the swamp, I could hear something walking next to us. And every time we would stop, it would stop. And I took pictures of where where it was pacing us. And lo and behold, you could see two sets of red eyes just staring at us.
Oh yeah.
And it was
Oh,
time.
yeah.
It was time to go. They were pacing us out.
Mhm.
They were
Did you
pacing us
get
out.
during these encounters where you had visuals? Did
Yes.
you get odors? You got
I
odors.
never. I We talked about that last week. I have never,
Yeah.
not once, gotten an odor from a
Okay.
Sasquatch.
Okay. Well, I'm going to bring this up because one of the things I did in between our sessions here was I listened to Untold Radio with Alex and Doug Hychek and some of the
Okay.
guys like Larry Beans Baxter and Rob Rise and Alexander who films for Small Town Monsters, and
Yep.
they were on a private property up in Alaska. What I found interesting about that was I asked all the guys, what was the odor situation up there? Because this is rugged territory, and the
Sure.
first thing you think of is aggression. Well, they were having interactions with individuals that seemed curious and were messing with them to see what they do. Not one person smelled one odor the whole time.
Yep.
So is
I've,
that not interesting?
it,
That is
it's
odd.
very it's very odd. I've never not once gotten the odor from them. Never.
Yeah. And I've
So
never smelled anything terrifying except once, and I described that last time when I was in a pickup truck driving by the road, and this thing was so powerful it filled the odor in. It put the odor in the truck at 60 miles an hour, both windows up. I turned around, I slowed down to 25 miles an hour, and I came back for that odor, rolled down both windows. I slowed down to less than 20 miles an hour, or maybe 25, just to pick up that odor. It was gone. And I certainly don't know that that was a Sasquatch, but it was worse than a pig
yeah.
farm. I had never smelled anything like that before or since.
Mm.
So,
Mm-mm-mm.
Dan, I was out in Oklahoma going about 3 years ago now. Northwest Oklahoma, where it touches Colorado. And I was out there with a full team, 7 guys. And the reason we were out there was because of a Dogman.
right.
What we did not find in this one case, we were in a forested area and we did not find a Dogman per se, because what happened to us what we experienced, I don't think a Dogman can do. We're in a diamond formation patrolling through this forest area. The trees are generally 6 to maybe 10 inches around. They're going up as tall as 18, 20 feet. I mean, you're getting your other trees there that are 25 inches, 30 inches around also, but generally you had the smaller, in circumference trees. All of a sudden we hear what sounds like giant footsteps coming towards us. It's like a tornado coming towards us.
Yeah.
We take a knee. We're listening, and I think I told this to you already, Jay, and maybe in another show. We're listening, and it sounds like it's some kind of, I don't know, destructive force coming at us because the trees are getting knocked down. We take a knee, and several of us take out our bear spray, and we just shot it. Our bear spray goes out about 36 feet. And I think 4 or 5 of us just shot it straight out into the forest area.
Sure.
We keep hearing this sound, everybody put the rifles, in that one area because they're like, what the hell is coming out of the clearing?
Sure.
And the trees keep going down. I'm like, what the hell out here could be dropping these trees? Could it be a wild boar, a 1,200-pound wild boar? I don't think so. I don't think a 1,200-pound wild boar is going to be able to knock down an 8-inch tree, a 10-inch tree or something like that in that many trees anyway.
No.
It gets to my estimation about 70, 75 feet away from us. Now, mind you, the bear spray is percolating outwards from us.
Sure.
The wind was to our back, so I think it was blowing that way anyway. And it stops. All of a sudden, there's no more of this ruckus. I mean, we're ready to light this thing up with 308s, and it's like, what the heck is this? But it stopped. All of a sudden, it stopped.
Sure.
And then we hear pounding, and it goes away. It goes the opposite way. Well, we didn't go straight in. We wanted to wait anyway for the bear spray to clear out. We put on masks. We went around to the side. After about 20 minutes, we went in towards it. And I'm going to tell you the destruction in that forest area. I would say
it looked like bulldozers.
It looked like a bulldozer. Yeah. I was going to say the destruction was the path was about 12 feet wide. I mean, trees were just knocked down. And we're like, some of the guys are like, could it have been a herd of wild boar? Well, no, because we checked the ground later on after it cleared out, the bear spray and everything. We checked the ground, and no, there was no, multiple prints of pig prints or anything like that. 3 toes.
Yeah.
There was nothing like that at all. I mean, to hear the sound, it was absolutely amazing. We must have pissed something off out there.
I would have sure loved to have got the recording of that. That would have been fantastic. Welcome to the Sasquatch world, because I've got report after report after report like that.
That's not what we were out there looking for at all.
I understand.
This thing found us. It must have been pissed. It must.
Well, it was definitely a defensive threat, and smart enough to leave, which it did.
Yeah.
I've got a guy. He passed away, unfortunately, but a friend of mine had a friend who spent every year up in Canada, and totally dismisses any Sasquatch legend, of course. But
really?
He said, I did have an interesting time once with an unusual bear, because it followed us to the cabin. And then when we found the unusual looking tracks, and it must have been a deformed bear, it knocked all the trees down. Every tree was ripped up a half a mile along the trail all the way to the house. And what an unusual bear.
And he's sticking to that it's an unusual bear, huh?
Yeah.
He stuck to that, right?
He did the entire time.
Wow.
Well, I think we told you about this one. I mean, a case that I had to hand over to Jay, the one where the lady thought it was a Dogman, and
Oh yeah.
Turned out to be an extremely large Sasquatch, because I don't know any bear or any dog man that can take 4x4s that are sunk 42 inches into the ground out of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Same with trees. How, there's only one creature that I'm going to call it a creature out there, and it's not a bear, that probably has the strength to rip a tree out of the ground, or a 4x4 that's 42 inches under, and toss it around. And that would have to be a Sasquatch or your friend's unusual bear.
Yes.
Right.
I don't
Good
think
point.
bears usually do that, do they, Dan? I mean,
No.
They definitely don't tear them out and turn them upside down and jam them back in the ground.
exactly.
There's another
That's for sure.
example. Yep.
I like
It's-
that one you got, because I've gotten report after report from people out there looking for Dogman, and they're like, well, we found these trees that were uprooted. Their roots are in the air and the tops are jammed into the ground.
That's right.
You realize the amount of force to jam a tree into the ground enough where it's standing practically straight up? That's,
Right.
that's some,
God.
Dan, that's some crazy force.
Well, it's controversial because it's so unacceptable to accept. You just how can
Right.
that wasn't a very well placed series of words, but pardon
No,
me.
I like that. I like that. That
No,
was
that's
said it right.
perfect.
Okay, I'll go with it then. So, but no, it's what amazes me about these things is they're so curious. They have such a high level of sensitivity, so that their response is almost like some autistic people who are frustrated because they hear so much and the hearing bothers them, but their curiosity causes them to stay and watch. And so you get the swaying behavior behind the nervousness behind the tree. You get the frustration behavior with its arm snaps, the Marble Mountain video, if it's real, and I'm assured it is. But the general public's reaction, of course, is that's ridiculous. But that thing just goes haywire if it is real. And there's so many other things that are just totally suggest they're just in awe of what we do, and they're just watching, but yet they're frustrated and they're nervous. So you get all these crazy little arm movements and herky-jerky and things like that. I know some of this has been written about, and I haven't reviewed the literature on that yet, but it just makes total sense to me that you'd have an individual that's frustrated because it doesn't accept, or it doesn't easily adjust to irritating things, but yet it's so curious, it's drawn to stay to watch, if that makes sense. And certainly all the individuals vary, and they don't all copycat the same type of behavior, but there's some repetition of that, at least described in some of the reports. And I find that intriguing. So if you're not a threat, maybe that will increase the likelihood of closing some of the distance. Whereas obviously, if you remain a threat, then you're going to be a lot easier to stay away from, in some of them. And some of these things have had negative experiences. I know in Dr. Robert J. Alley's book, Reinforced Sasquatch, he talks about a Sasquatch that had scars on its back from being shot by gunshot, but it never bothered anybody, and it was just hanging around to get the berries, and people would see it and it'd grunt and walk off. So you obviously have individual personalities just like us. So
exactly.
Dan, here's one for you. Same place, not my group. 5 hunters. They were hunting wild pigs. I guess they're called feral pigs in Oklahoma. And they saw this big one, and they shot it. 2 of the guys shot it. They nailed it. It started running, so they're tracking it. And they hear some odd noises, odd bangs out in the forest area. But they finally track this feral pig. They bring in their 4x4. They hook it up onto a sled, and they drag it out. And they take it back to their main camp. They have 2 camps, one out in the woods and their main camp further out, a couple miles out. They come back the next day to their wood camp, and they find trees shoved upside down all around their main camp. Now, this is a report that I had read originally, and then I decided I wanted to contact these guys. I got 2 of the guys, and I spoke to them. individually.
Sure.
And they both told me, yes, there were trees with the roots sticking up in the air, and right in their forest camp area. It didn't follow them home or anything or go that way. But what I'm thinking, I'm putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 9, that this Sasquatch got pissed because it took a food source from them.
Mhm.
And as a warning, it jammed trees upside down. And I had spoken to other Sasquatchologists out there, Bigfooters,
Mhm.
and several of them, not all of them, but several of them did say that's a warning sign. The tree's upside down. Well, you know what? Even if you weren't a Sasquatch person, if I saw that in the woods, I'd take it as a warning sign.
Absolutely.
But this was 5 hunters that were out there, and they didn't go back to that area.
Smart move, I think.
Did not go back. Because I can't imagine, he's going to tell his buddies at home, they took what I wanted to bring home to eat, and that's the end of that. That wouldn't have been a happy 911 situation.
No, I'm going to give you one off the cuff from a friend of mine who passed away. She was in Florida, and unfortunately, she's gone. She was an incredible wealth of information. I'm not obliged to give her name out, but I will say that she had sent me photographs of tracks and things like that, and so she had secondary evidence to back things up. In this case, and I wasn't there, but the description was there was a landowner who had basically a farmer who eventually employed somebody to take out the local Sasquatch because of the agitation and problems. And it all started with trees being removed from a property for pasture. And apparently one individual pushed a tractor, and it started there. Then there was gunshot, and this particular fellow was hired to eliminate this big fella, supposedly. Well, one thing led to another, and anger and frustration grew. And eventually, and there's a side story of another policeman who had actually tracked one with a German Shepherd, and the German Shepherd was killed. And it came back. By the time the policeman got back, the top of his hood of his vehicle rolled up with paper. So when he left, obviously. What we had here was pretty soon the electricity of the house was taken down. All the windows were broken, and the man sent his children and wife out of there, and eventually he left as well, because although not killed, this thing was really starting to become super aggressive, and he was shooting at it. I don't know how many visuals he had. I don't have any details, but it certainly, things can escalate, and you've got some people that are a little less flexible and a little more short-tempered than others, and more willing to pull the trigger. And I think that also varies on the age and the experiences and the temperament of the individual that we're working with. Some would just leave because a weapon was pulled, and others are like, okay, and then all of a sudden rocks are being fired, something like that. So there's so many stories, but there's another one. So she also had an interesting story about a friend of hers that was living alone, and a big male came over to the window and looked in, and the guy was freaking out because he absolutely did not believe that the species could be real, and it ended up licking the glass,
Licking the
looking
glass.
at him. It just licked, big tongue, licked the glass, and just looked at him and kind of smiled, and he just about lost it. But that was one of the more interesting sidebar reports that I had gotten.
Oh, wow.
Kind of creepy.
She had told me that she had seen that individual, and he was okay. He wasn't aggressive. He was just curious and interesting. Oh.
Dan, I don't know how far and deep you go into a wooded area, but when I go with my team, we'll go anywhere from 6 to 10 miles in.
Wow.
And I mean, we're in quite good shape.
Sure.
But what I'm with the idea I was coming out with here is the more and more we do that, and the more tracks we find that are not Dogman tracks. I mean, and it's not regular animal tracks. And that case I had, like I had told Jay and gave it to him about, where we found the 15-footer in upper New York State there. We're out there with 308s. Not that I want to turn this into a weapons discussion, but
Sure.
I don't know if I want to carry a 44-pound plus ammunition 50 caliber with me, because some of these things are ranging from 12 feet to 15 feet. How tall, they're probably 3,000 pounds. And you got to understand, when you're looking at creatures like that, the hide, number one, is tough. Then you have the adipose tissue, which is probably not much, but there's probably some. Then you got the muscle and then the bone density. Trying to take something like that down, unless you get a lucky shot into the eye, which hits the brainstem. You know, I mean, I'm talking about self-defense now. What happens if it becomes aggressive? And these things are known to move quick, you know, fast. I mean, a bear can move in a straight line up to 50 miles an hour. So, I mean, I can imagine what these things can probably move if it's comparable to that, you know, comparable to a grizzly bear.
Sure.
What the heck are we finding out there? And like I said, we go out there 6 to 10 miles, sometimes a little deeper, depending on what we're looking for and where we're at, how much time we have. And, you know, there's not much out there. And when you come across something you're not looking for and it finds you, I don't know. I mean, you know, that's kind of heavy weaponry to be dragging around a 50 cal, you know, and 7 guys walking around with a 50 cal. It's kind of rough, you know, plus the ammo, you know. I don't know if I want to trade out my 308 for that, but I gotta tell people that are listening, when you're out there, please be careful and please take all kind of precautions.
Yes.
Well, you guys have more of the aggression experiences than I do. Everything that I've had so far has been just things know I'm there, and sometimes I know they're there, and I don't get visual, and I do get vocalizations, but I usually don't have anything come in close. I'm gonna try to change that this year. I have had some experiences in Arkansas and in Georgia and in Oklahoma and in Arkansas and Missouri, and that's and a little bit in Wisconsin. But it's I've got to up my ante now, so it's going to be a lot of tents in some rural areas where there's been repeat activities. But I'm looking for the nice activities, not the 15-footers that jam trees and the. So
that's an anomaly, I think, goes the 15-footers. You know, that's
of
really
course, of course.
Yeah. Now, Dan, if you want to get something that's active, I mean, I've only had only 3 occasions where, like you're saying, they're aggressive.
Right.
I mean, we're talking Sasquatch now, and I wasn't
of course
for that. If you want to go to Oklahoma, where Oklahoma becomes that rectangle, you know,
right.
northwest corner up there, where it's near Colorado, Kansas area, that's where that aggressiveness was.
Right.
And I just think it's because we were messing with its food source.
Sure.
The water source was off to our east at that point, and it was maybe a couple miles away.
Yep.
But I think it was a food source, and you know that's why we didn't fire a shot, you know, while we're out there. But it was probably hunting.
And you guys did have weapons, and you were males, and there were more than one of you. So
now, mind you, what we do with our weapons, because I'm cognizant of the fact that animals can their scent, their sense of scent is way better than ours.
Sure.
What we do is, after we clean it with our gun cleaning, we run coconut oil throughout the gun and on the gun and all over. We're trying to disguise it, you know, disguise that and disguise our scent also. We go out.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Because I know for a fact that, I mean, deer can even smell that gunpowder. Deer can smell gun oil.
Sure.
What we've been doing is that's what we've been doing. And it's that same space, that same area where I told you the 5 hunters were at, where they took down a wild feral pig and took it out of there. It was probably, if I look on a map, probably only about 30 miles from where we were. So the Squatch probably has a very large area.
Yeah, 30 miles is nothing for a Squatch travel.
especially those big males, you
Yep.
know. And plus, I mean, our athletes, you guys can easily cover 10 miles in a night. And you know, if you go out and walk, I walked last time I did a little hike. I did 11 miles that day, 8 by day, and then 3 by night. That was in the Kettle Moraine of Wisconsin, and we did have some interesting things happen. That was in Christmas area time. Um, I'll have to elaborate on that sometime too. Nothing major happened. We got wood knocks, we got unusual vocalizations, and I actually had something happen that was real interesting by an area that I found out later was especially interesting because of potential forest manipulation. But I was smelling flowers, 15-mile-an-hour winds, near pine trees, smelling flowers. And some of the elders have told me, and some of the other folks that work with the elders have simply said, that's a female. And you should be lucky because that's not typical for them to come close to males, which may or may not be true because I think different people have different experiences and different opinions. So, but I'm learning and um, I've been listening to Cliff. I've been listening to other people who have all kinds of information reports. I'll be listening to Jay and you and on a regular basis, try to pick up all your podcasts as I'm able. There's so much potential information out there. A lot of it's fragmented and we're trying to put it all together. And you know how kind of a job that is. It's a big job. And we have different spins and different takes and different situations. And plus we're dealing with a species that certainly it's an animal. It's not a plant, but exactly what kind of an animal is the controversy. And then on top of that, it's like, are they all the same? Well, as Jay suggests, 10 different varieties. And if that's the case, some I bet are far more animal than others. So, and then are they hybridizing? I have no idea. So this is just an incredible mystery.
Well, speaking of sense, Dan, for your notes, I can't tell you what we smelled because we blasted probably about 5 different canisters of bear spray. So you got that cayenne pepper. We didn't smell anything. Those 5 hunters, out of the 5 of them, I spoke to 2 of them on the phone.
Yep.
And they did say that they did smell a heavy fecal odor. Okay. Not urine. They more like a poop odor that they smelled out there. Right near their camping area. So for your notes, if you want to put that down, and it was in the general area, if you want to call 30 miles away, general area. But as Jay said, 30 miles for their home base area for a Sasquatch is probably nothing because of the way they move. I'll tell you right now, my team, we used Ranger beads and we checked out how fast we moved. And we generally do 3 miles in 1 hour. And I know we hit 9 miles in 3 hours one time. So, you know, we're one of the guys is using Ranger beads and he's counting how far we're going. So, I mean, we're moving pretty decent through there. You know, we have all the equipment, but
especially with all the obstructions and the land's not flat and all that. Exactly.
We're
trying to make observations.
The land is not flat. You're walking through vines and weeds and you're walking over logs. I mean, we're not trying to move fast, but we're trying to move at a good clip while being cognizant of our surroundings, what's following us. We look up at all times and, you know, we're seeing around. So, you know, 9 miles in 3 hours is our general pace.
Sure.
So we're going pretty deep in there. And, you know, like I said, only 3 times something aggressive out there, you know,
interesting.
And all 3 times it was Sasquatch too.
Yep, but it only takes one time, right? And exactly. And I have a couple quick questions that come surface. One, Jay, of all the places you've been, where do you feel like the concentration of aggression might be? Was it more so in North Carolina, more so in New York, about even, or what are you thinking?
I think it's a split between the two. I would have to say a little bit more in North Carolina, but the ones we've got on our property, they've been there forever. They know we're not a threat.
Sure.
We developed kind of a relationship with them, but I've got spots up here where we've experienced aggression, where you can just about cut the air you know, in the night, detention,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
Now, North Carolina is where the I would have to say the most aggressive behavior took place.
Interesting.
Wow.
Of both you guys, of the 9/11 things, uh, responses where there's been missing people, and it kind of attributes 20% of the missing to perhaps cryptids. You know, I'm just wondering, are there particular areas in New York, especially, that have repeat problems, like a history of missing people?
My father was
Some of
on a
these other
case
states.
back in, yeah,
What's that?
my father was on a case, the Douglas Leg case back in the 70s.
Yes.
Uh, the Dave Paulides writes about that in one of his books,
Okay.
411. His name was Douglas Leg. He went missing, and then he fits the criteria for all those cases.
Mhm.
And people go missing in the Adirondack Park all the time under these same circumstances.
Really?
Yeah, you
Yep.
know, he's right. Yeah, for me, it's the cases I've had in New York, uh, and I would say it would be upstate Western New York
Yes.
because that's where we had the so-called Dogman. It turned out to be a Sasquatch.
Mhm.
That's where I had a case where it was, I believe, a Dogman case. It was an extremely rich area. I've told this story before. Extremely rich area. It's like 5-acre zoning to put a house on. The people generally have walled in compounds, walled in areas around their very expensive houses.
Sure.
Mm.
A Belgian Malinois dog was taken out of the backyard.
And
And
for those unfamiliar with the species, is that quite large or
well,
not so much?
this dog in particular was about 85 pounds.
Okay, that's quite
They're
large.
known as a
Okay.
hair whistle. The SEALs use them. They're
Sure.
a military dog, but this dog was brought to the family as a protective, agent to protect the kids because they had younger children.
Sure.
Very
Sure.
smart, super smart dog.
Yep.
It can be aggressive to non-family members.
Certainly.
This dog was taken out of a backyard where they had a very high brick wall around the entire backyard area.
Hmm.
And it was found 3 blocks away by a neighbor in the street with the chest ripped open, uh, some of the organs missing, and I mean this dog was messed up.
Yeah.
Now, some people will say, "Oh, it could have been a mountain lion." Well, there would have been a fight between the dog and the mountain lion in the
Absolutely.
yard, and there would have been blood. This thing was taken, and a mountain lion can jump 14 feet, okay, but not with like an 85-pound dog in its mouth. I don't
Yeah.
believe. I
I
know,
would
I
agree
know
with
they
you.
can climb a tree with something like that in its mouth, but not do the jump. So whatever it was, I'm thinking it was a dog, man, and it jumped the brick wall and ripped it apart, and they found the dead dog 3 blocks away. Now, to answer your question, I found that in upper Western New York State, and
Mhm.
that's where those 2 cases were from.
Sure.
So, and as far as the most aggressive, I can't say anything about Sasquatch, but I can say for Dogman, the most aggressive we found when I was with the team, going back a little bit over, well, about 2 years now, we were in Louisiana, and I think that's where we had the most aggressive Dogman community that I've ever come across. I mean,
Mhm.
the growls, the scratchings on the trees, the claw marks. Uh, that was the most aggressive down in Louisiana.
Mhm. Interesting. Interesting. And speaking of Oklahoma, if things work out, I'll be there in about 2 weeks. So
Ah,
in the
Nice.
Kiamichis, the
are you going
team's
to?
going in.
Yeah.
The team's going in. They're going to open it up to the public a little bit in one of the locations in the Kiamichi Mountains at a site that's had some repeat behavior historically, and I think Randy Harrington had his experience there. But anyway, there'll be a drone looking for heat signatures. Uh, we don't. We're waiting to see how this is going to work out because of the numbers of potential people. which could be an asset because of women and children, et cetera. And then also, this is a new exercise, and we'll have to see how things are done with a drone and working with people and things of that nature. So, I'm letting the team is operating that, and then I'm just waiting to find out the details as they emerge. So we'll see how that goes. And then after that, I'm speaking in Arkansas, speaking in Tennessee in September and October. And then I've got some other opportunities that may come up as well, including vendoring in Ohio. And I'm interested in the whole Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia scene, and especially some of the other Midwestern states. So I've got plenty of things to do and many people to try to tackle to try to get the footprints from them. So,
Right.
How long will you be out in Oklahoma on that?
Not very long. Just like a half a week or something like that. So
Yeah.
And I've got other issues at home that I've got to deal with, so I can't be there too long.
What I was going to suggest is get them used to the drone. Get the cryptids used to the drone. Like in the military, what you would do is you would send helicopters over an area that you're going to in the future, do a, go in on them at nighttime. So what you want to do is you want to send helicopters over the area, every day. Get them used to it. Get them used to it before you run an operation.
Agreed.
So if you were there for 2 weeks, you could send those drones out there in the same area every day, a couple of times a day for 8-9 days. Maybe after that, they'll get used to it and you'll start seeing something.
Right.
They're going to be able to pick it up. Remember, their ears are better than ours.
Of course. Well, this operation has already started, so I'll see what we can report as they make things public. So,
good.
And at this point in time, I don't have any details, but I just thought I'd let you know that I'm going to try to go to Oklahoma. So we'll see, because I really enjoy that down there, and I have had some experience in Arkansas, and I'm hoping to pick up more too. So,
okay, are we going to have a part 3? Because we're running out of film here today.
I'd like to, if Dan's up for it.
In the future, Dan, you think maybe?
Yeah,
third
absolutely.
time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You bet.
That'd be great.
Time goes really fast around here, guys.
It does. It flies by, man. It flies by.
We actually started early tonight too, and
we started early. Yeah,
I'll be more available, Jay and Nick, and we can talk more about different things to talk about too, to make sure we don't forget things. So so hopefully I did okay for you.
Oh, you did.
I had a blast.
You did great, Dan. You did great. Thanks for coming on. And you want to reach any of us, you can reach me at onthetrail.jf@gmail.com or internationaldogman.jf@gmail.com. Nick, messenger, email.
Well, definitely International Dogman Project -USA or any of the International Dogman projects that are out there. But I think, Dan, we've spoken over Messenger on Facebook. So.
Oh, we have.
Yeah. So if you ever need anything,
we'll continue. You bet.
Yeah.
So guys, stay after we close up, everybody just stay on, please.
Yeah,
sure.
definitely.
And then I was just going to say, mine is DANA, Dana Nedrelo, stands for Dan A. Nedrelo on Facebook. Feel free to messenger me that way if people said, or just hit me with the, one way or another, find me in one of the groups or whatever. I'm usually all over the place, so easy to get.
You're pretty easy to get in touch with.
Yes.
But thanks again, Dan, and thank you for our viewers out there. We appreciate it. We appreciate you taking the time to watch us. And everybody have a good night. And God bless. Be good. Everyone be good to each other. And things are going to be all right.
Good, everybody.
Hopefully God bless Stacy. God bless Stacy as she continues to heal up. So
thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right.